Hello, class. My semester project, the genetic disorder that I chose to learn more about and discuss was primary congenital hypothyroidism. And the history of the hypothyroidism is that the thyroid gland is a butterfly-shaped tissue. It's located in your anterior lower neck. And what it does is it produces iodine-containing hormones, and these play a really important role in regulating your growth, your brain development, and the rate of your chemical reactions in your body, one of the main ones being metabolism. And congenital hypothyroidism is due to the failure of the thyroid gland to develop properly, and this results in the complete or partial loss of its function. So people with congenital hypothyroidism have lower than normal levels of these important hormones. The number of people it affects is about 1 out of every 2,000 to 4,000 newborns, so it is pretty common, but not very common. And it tends to affect more females than males. The ratio is 2 to 1. It's inherited a couple different ways. The main mode of inheritance is de novo mutation, which means that it occurs in infants with no history of the disorder in their family. Instead, a mutation occurs early in embryonic development. The second mode of inheritance, and the most common, is the autosomal recessive pattern. This means that the infant has inherited 2 mutated genes, one coming from each parent, who themselves carry 1 copy of the mutated gene, but they themselves do not exhibit signs of the condition. And the last way that it's inherited is the autosomal dominant inheritance pattern. And this is when mutations occur in the PAX8, the TSHR, or the DUOX2 gene, and they've been passed down from an affected parent, and these affected genes have a 50% of chance of being passed on to offspring during each pregnancy. And this is the pedigree that I came up with for congenital hypothyroidism. As you can see, the parents in the top left, Jerome and Jean, the probability of their next child being affected is 0 out of 4. The couple in the top right, George and Allison, the probability of their next child being affected is 1 out of 4. Then in the middle, you can see that George and Allison and Jerome and Jean each had a child that got married, Andrew and Rachel, and the probability of Andrew and Rachel's next child being affected is 1 out of 2. Now in the bottom left, Lucy and William, they got married, and the probability of their next child being affected is also 1 out of 2. The signs and symptoms of congenital hypothyroidism, they can be jaundice, constipation, poor muscle tone, sluggishness, a hoarse-sounding cry, the infant exhibiting feeding problems, a thick, large tongue, a puffy face, a swollen abdomen, and large soft spots of the skull. So these are the classic signs and symptoms that a newborn would exhibit. However, some newborns will not exhibit any of these symptoms and will appear completely normal at birth and even for several months after birth. The characteristics of congenital hypothyroidism is the shortage of thyroid hormones disrupts normal growth, brain development, and metabolism. And if it's left untreated, it can actually lead to mental retardation. So treatment options, early detection is really important. And if treatment begins in the first 2 weeks after birth, infants usually develop normally. And treatment is through thyroid hormone replacement drugs, mainly levothyroxine. The responsible genes and mutations for this, the first one is TSHB. So mutations in the TSHB gene disrupt the synthesis of thyroid hormones by impairing the stimulation of hormone production. Additional mutations can also occur in the PAX8, the TSHR, or the DUOX2 gene. Then there's also the TSH mutation. So a TSH deficiency is a result of mutations in the genes encoding the TRH receptor or the beta subunit of TSH. So the genetic testing options. So in the United States and many other countries, all hospitals test newborns for congenital hypothyroidism. And the indicators are low levels of T4 and high levels of TH likely suggest a diagnosis of congenital hypothyroidism. So the ways that you test for this is a newborn screening, and this is performed on all newborns, and it's the process of testing babies for serious but treatable conditions. And it includes a variety of different testing methods. One is a heel stick. They'll also do a hearing screen and then do a pulse oximetry. The testing for congenital hypothyroidism is the heel stick or a blood test, and it's performed to test the level of thyroid hormone, which is T4, and the thyroid stimulating hormone, which is TSH. And that was it for my congenital hypothyroidism. I hope you all learned a little bit more about it, and I've really enjoyed learning more about this subject.